are you?
Hello.
Okay. Some of you don't look overjoyed and happy. This is, you know, you could have 6 weeks left. Anyway.
It's all crushing in.
Okay. Any questions on the last paper? Okay.
Yeah, on the, let me pull it back up real quick. The section with the companies we're looking at sourcing.
Let me pull that up. You guys are rushing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I've got it. Go ahead.
Okay. So you were less than thrilled with the answer. Just to put that it was weak. What additional information would you like to have added in there based on the limited amount of information we're able to get on these companies?
Okay. Let me take a fast look. How did you guys do on section 10? Okay. Yeah, you lost 1.5 points on each one of 10. Let me address 10 first, and then we'll come down to the other one. The problem that you have with 10 is that if a vice president's asking you for some information, what they want to know, I'm sorry, a good example just crossed my mind and I was debating on whether to use it or not. Sometimes I might ask someone a question as to, I see that you have chosen this over that, and you know, I had always thought that the other product was a little bit better and that it was stronger, and that the company had a better reputation. But I noticed that you've recommended company XYZ. Is that right? And the answer comes back, yes. Okay, now I'm the one that's really to blame because I didn't ask the question correctly. But the person that says yes doesn't tell me what I want to know, because I kind of let them know that I have concerns, that I had heard this was a better company and they were more reliable and that the prices were cheaper. And none of those issues were addressed. And so in your section 10, when it's asking you for, what the rubric asks you for is the pros and cons of each of these methods or modes of entry. And actually what it's done is it's asked you to watch the presentation that was sent out, and then for you to make a list of all of the possible modes of entry that there are and put them on that list. And then it says, go back in section 10.1 and tell me those modes that are not practical or not suitable for your particular product in this particular country at this particular time. And so if I get, for example, I'll kill two birds with one stone because there's another problem here. Let's look at, if you guys have not already done so, please pull up your papers so we can take a look at these. And if you take a look, in 10.1, it's asking you which ones are not feasible. So you should have taken the entire list of all of the modes of entry and then put a little check mark next to those that are not feasible. And then you would list those in 10.1, and you would give the pros and the cons of both, because the vice president wants to know that you understand not only what it is, but what the advantages are and what the disadvantages are. And you remember that when we were talking in the last meeting that I mentioned to you that there is a difference between mergers and acquisitions. People use the words in the same sentence, but they are two different things and they have two different pros and cons. And so what you've done in yours is that you've put mergers and acquisitions, and then you've given.
Brother Jones, your mic is off.
Oh my gosh. How long has my mic been off?
Not long at all.
Okay, I turned it off so I could swear, and now I've turned it back on. I apologize. So then I've just been talking to myself here this whole time.
No, we heard when you started talking about mergers and acquisitions, and then it cut out right after that, I believe.
Oh, okay. I know what happened. I found a new secret. Do you guys know that if you're on mute, that you can push the space bar and come off of mute and then let go of the space bar and go back on mute? I didn't know that. I thought you had to keep clicking and stuff. But that's what I did. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. I messed up. Okay. On mergers and acquisitions, a lot of the times those terms are used in the same sentence, but they don't mean the same thing. And there are pros and cons to mergers that are different than the pros and cons to acquisitions. And so you can't put mergers and acquisitions and then list reasons for elimination. And the reason for that is because you have, for example, loss of control of assets such as stocks. Now, I don't know what you mean, but you don't lose any control of stocks. You gain control. Whether it's a merger or an acquisition, you gain control of the stocks. You own the stocks of both companies.
I think that was my fault because I've been part of so many acquisitions that where my company has been acquired, that's just automatically where my brain went. If you're getting acquired, then yeah, you're going to lose control.
It's a totally different story.
Yeah.
If you are getting acquired, you're the loser.
Yeah.
And you lose stock, you lose control of operations, you lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
But the pros, give me some pros then of an acquisition. So even though you've been on the bad side where you've been acquired, what's some of the pros of two companies, one company acquiring another one?
Well, it depends on which company you work for. If you're working for the company that's doing the acquiring, then you have all of those new resources. Yes, you pull in some of their liabilities too, but you get to take whatever aspect you wanted of that company and bring it into yours and use that particular function.
That's right. So you now own all of the buildings, and you can decide which ones you want to keep, which ones you want to get rid of. You own all of the equipment. You can decide what you want to keep and what you want to get rid of. You own both HR departments, and you can decide who gets to stay and who gets to go. The bad point is that you also acquire their debts. You acquire any negative reputation that they may have had. You acquire any lawsuits that are either against them or pending or future lawsuits that may come up. So when but an acquisition, but a merger is a little bit different, because in a merger, now you've got two groups of people coming together, and they're coming together pretty much as equals. Now that's not always necessarily true. It depends on how the thing goes, but pretty much plan on that they're coming together as equals. So now they get to talk about things. and who's going to stay, who's going to go, what you're going to keep, what you're going to lose. It's not a one-sided decision. It's like a marriage. Okay, now you get to talk about stuff. Well, hopefully it's like a marriage, and marriages get to talk about stuff. Okay, so you can't go in then and say mergers and acquisitions. Here's the reason for the elimination of consideration, because like Tricia said, you were looking at it from the standpoint of being acquired. And that's all true, but you can't do that as a business person, because your vice president is asking you what is it that you would recommend to go into, what mode of entry would you use going in. Now, it's the same way, if I remember right, licensing and franchise. See, you put down reasons for elimination of consideration, but you don't tell me any of the positives. And the vice president wants to know, please know this, in the future, whenever you're working for a company, if they ask you for an opinion, they want to know for you to say, well, here's the pros and here's the cons. My personal opinion is, after looking at both of these, that this, you can say either the cons outweigh the pros or the pros outweigh the cons, and you tell them why. But you don't want to just say yes or no. You want to give them a reason why and what you're going to do. Now, when you talk about a turnkey project, this says you then turn it over to a new company to run. That I think you misunderstand what happens. Company A decides that they want to do business in Poland, so they go to a company that specializes in setting things up. They know the market. They know where to buy equipment. They know how to find trained personnel. They know how to build a building. They know how to do all of this stuff. And so you go to them and you say, here's what I want. And you tell them, I want a factory that will do this. And you may even give them the designs for the factory. And you tell them, I want so many of these type of employees and so many of these type of employees, and I want all of the equipment set up. And so this company then goes in, sets it all up, tests it, trains the, depending again on the contract you have with them, but maybe trains the personnel, gets it all ready, and then you pull up in the limousine and they walk out and they hand you the keys and say, we're ready to go. Well, they're not turning it over to the new company. They're working for the new company, and they are a vendor for the new company. And so the new company has owned all of this stuff all along, and all that the turnkey company is doing is, that's like you hiring the guy to come cut your lawn. He doesn't own your lawn. He just cuts it for you, and when it's done, you pay him $50 or however much in the U.S. it costs for cutting a lawn anymore. Let's see. On joint ventures, you've got down that it's separate from the original participant's business interests. Now, I'm not sure what you mean by that, because in a joint venture, what happens is that you have two companies that have different skills and assets or equipment, or one of them owns a patent or a copyright or something else, and the other one has something. This company has something this one doesn't and wants, and this company has something that this one doesn't but they want. And so a joint venture just creates a third company, and these are the two stockholders of that company. So I'm not sure what you mean when you say separate from the original participant's business interests. It is their business interests, or they wouldn't have gone into a joint venture. It's for their good, and because they think it's going to strengthen their company and bring them profits, so they come together.
So what I think I was trying to explain there was, it's the way I kind of pictured it is you have the two parent companies that get together and have a baby. And even though the parents still have an interest in it, the baby is his own person. and he kind of does his own thing with the parents' input. And so I didn't get that across very well.
Yeah, because part of your analogy is correct, and then part of it gets flawed. It is like a new baby is born, and it is a separate entity. But the reason that the baby was born was because it was in the interests of both parents.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening here. I took it different. When you said separate from the original participants' business interests. Well, the baby isn't separate from their interests. It brings their interests together. So that's the reason that I wanted to make sure that you understand that.
Mm-hmm.
When you have down there reasons for elimination for consideration, the last two, uneven division of work and resources. I'm not sure what you meant there, but it's not so much an uneven division of work and resources, and if it is, then in that joint venture agreement, there's going to be some type of consideration that says we're going to get 60% of the profits and you're going to get 40% of the profits. But it's going to come out, usually it's a joint effort, and both sides feel like they're putting in an equal amount in order to get something out of it. Now, the next one that you've got is the two companies must share profits. Yes, they do. But the two companies also share liabilities. And so when you say, oh, I'm sorry, this was reasons for elimination. Mm-hmm. You say, well, we're going to eliminate it because we have to share profits. Well, then my question to you would be, would you rather have $10 or no dollars? And so you may have to share profits, but you're $10 ahead than what you would be if you didn't share profits. Because if you didn't come together in that joint venture, you wouldn't be able to produce the product that sells for $20. And you give $10 to one side and $10 to the other one. So yeah, you have to share profits, but like I say, $10 is better than nothing. And then you have labeled 10.2 as remaining entry strategies. I've never docked points for what you use as subheaders because I've never told you what to use. But if you take a look at the rubric, what's going to happen is 10.1 should be labeled what you've got, unrealistic modes of entry. And the next one would be, rather than remaining modes, it would be possible successful modes of entry or viable modes of entry. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, the other problem that you had on this was you've only listed one viable mode of entry of contract manufacturing. Now, there's a couple of problems with that, and that is that you left off several other types of modes of entry up in 10.1. So, for example, importing. You have direct importing and indirect importing. You also have not discussed, you got licensing and franchise. There was something else that was left off there, and I forgot what it is. But anyway, when we're talking about viable modes of entry, a viable mode of, what was your product?
The full spectrum light bulb.
Okay. Why would a merger not be a feasible mode of entry?
At this point, we haven't really been able to find any companies in Russia that would be compatible. Granted, there wasn't, weeks of research done, but there are some contracting or manufacturing companies that maybe possibly, but there's not really any companies that have any type of light bulb manufacturing that we were able to find out of Russia, or at least that I was.
Okay, so merger by itself, just the merger mode of entry, is a viable mode. But when you get down and you're talking now about why wouldn't you choose that as a viable mode of entry, it's because there isn't an option that's available to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so remember that what the question is asking is, for a mode of entry, is it viable or not? And you're going to put either yes it is or no it's not. And then down in 10.3, you're going to say, of all of the ones that I've mentioned that are viable, here's the one that we recommend. And so with you telling me what you just did, and that is that you've looked around and haven't been able to find somebody that is in that industry, then that pretty much answers a lot of the questions that I had as to why it's not viable. But the actual mode of entry, the merger or the acquisition, is a viable mode of entry. There just is, when you get down here as to what the cons are that there is no company that you could do that mode of entry with. Do you understand what I'm saying? I need to understand that you know what a mode of entry or what the acquisition is and what a merger is. And this down here, because it doesn't give me any pros and cons, I don't know for sure that you understand what the pros are and what the cons are. And then your 10.3 is going to tell me, well, here's our best mode of entry. I hope I'm explaining that okay. Okay. Now let me see what it was on 10.3. Oh, if I remember right too, another thing that was confusing, I don't see it right here, but another thing that was confusing was when you started mentioning the United States. I think it was on tariffs or something. You're going to be shipping directly from China to Russia, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about the U.S. on tariffs or modes of entry or anything else. It's just, what is it going to take if a shipment arrives in Russia and it came from China? What are they going to charge you to let that come into the country? So regardless of your parent company being from the U.S., they don't care.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just shipping into Russia. Now down here, when you've got risks associated, hold on just a second. Let me come back up here. Utilization of contract manufacturing will free up resources to boost marketing efforts. I'm not sure, again, now I put that in the grading comments and we don't need to talk about it too much here, but I'm not sure what you mean when you say that doing the contract manufacturing is going to free up resources. You're still going to have to pay for the contract manufacturing. I think that maybe what happened is that you made an assumption that it was going to be cheaper to use contract manufacturing than it would be to do your own manufacturing. If that's the assumption, and if that is in fact true, then this sentence is correct. But if it's not, and if what you're going to be doing is producing your own in your own factory, and you can do it for a relatively close or competitive cost with a contract manufacturer, then you may be better doing your own manufacturing because you do have better control over this. But now the next sentence you said, this will reduce financial liability risks associated with producing a fragile object. I'm not sure that contract manufacturing is going to reduce that financial liability and risk because part of it's going to be depending upon how you've written the contract, who's responsible for breakage or pilferage or whatever it might be. But what you need to do is to just explain that a little bit more so that I understand and I know for sure that you understand what it is that we're talking about. They also have a strict quality control policy ensuring their products achieve a high level of quality. Whenever you are going to use a contract manufacturer, the best practices model is for you, your company, to have a quality control team on site at that contract manufacturer. And that quality control team does inspections and looks at the product, not only in the way it's being assembled, but how it arrives at their warehouse, your contract manufacturers, how they handle it, how they put it together, what they do with it. And so it's best if you have your own team that's right there. When you do that, and then also when you write in specifications in the contract that says you will produce for us a product that meets these specifications, you can control the quality of that. And if they give you product that doesn't meet that quality, you send it back and you don't pay for it. So you still have a lot of control over the quality with the contract manufacturing. Anyway, what I'm trying to say, summing this whole thing up, that's the best way to do this. In 10.1, put down those things that are just not viable. So franchise and licensing is, in your case, with what you've got, are not viable options. And remember that when we're talking about this doesn't mean you being the licensor or you being the franchisor. It means you being the franchisee or the licensee. You going somewhere else and buying the material for your lights. Or is that your product, the lights?
Huh?
Okay. So it's you going somewhere else then and buying that product for the lights. That's not feasible for a franchisor or for a licensor or a franchisee. Then in 10.2, you're going to list all of those. After you've made this list and you've checked off those that are not viable, you should have 3 or 4 left that are viable. And those are the ones that you're going to list in 10.2. And you're going to list the pros and the cons of each one of those. And then when you get down to 10.3, you're going to say, okay, now we've looked at everything that's not viable and we've looked at everything that is viable. And of those that are viable, here's the one that is recommended that we use. And here are the reasons why. And then after you've given the reasons why, now you're going to go to section 11 and you're going to say, and even though we've chosen that, and even though it's the best option for us, there are still some risks that are available. And we've thought about those. And we've got a plan to mitigate those risks. And so that's what you're talking about in 11.1 is how you're going to mitigate those risks. Then when you've got, I want you to know that I used your 12.2 paragraph as an example in the instructor's class. That's the best answer that I have ever seen. And the reason that it's the best answer is because all of the question just asked, the question is a dumb question. And this made my point that it was a dumb question. Because the only thing you have to do is to say, here's the harmonized tariff code and here's what the duty is. That fully answers the question. And I don't remember what it's worth, 3 points or something like that. So you've got a 1-sentence answer that's worth 3 points. And a little bit later here, like on 12, I don't remember what it was, 12.5 or something else, you get 6 points, and it takes you 3 days to write the answer to the dang thing. And so I used your example to tell them they need to redo the way that they're doing points and the way that they're doing stuff here. So whoever wrote 12.2, way to go.
Good job, Josh.
Now that brings us to the question that you had on sourcing companies. So go ahead and ask your question.
Well, there is very limited information without contacting the company and, actually going into it deeper than we can about these particular companies. So I'm struggling to know what else we can and should be putting in about them.
Well, the best thing, the place, one of the reasons that I put, you didn't put in, there could be more information on there, is let's go down to your last one, the Gene Lighting, Shinzun company. All you've got is 2 pros and 2 cons.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I agree with you that it's probably going to be difficult to find a lot of information here. But did you get this off of Alibaba?
I'm not sure. Tanner got this.
Okay. Alibaba is going to give you a whole bunch of stuff. And that was kind of where I thought that maybe some of this stuff up under, oh no, all 3 of these are like that. All that's listed is pros and cons. You need to tell a little bit about that company. Now, I'm sure that either they have a website or they have a little blurb on Alibaba or Made in China, and there's one more, I've forgotten the other one. But you need to put a little bit more in there, because what the vice president wants to know is something like, how reputable are they? How long have they been in business? How big is the facility? What type of products do they make? Have they been given any awards? And if you got these off of Alibaba, all of that stuff is on there. And this just looked like somebody was in a hurry and threw up some pros and cons, but it does not tell the vice president the stuff that the vice president needs and wants to know. It did give some information, so I did give you some points. I don't remember how much it was. It did give me some information, but it didn't give me enough to make an intelligent decision. I want you to think of yourself, okay, I'm the vice president, multi-million-dollar investment into a company, and my future depends on it. And I've got 5 kids, and I've got my eye on some jet skis that I want. If I make the wrong recommendation here, I'm going to be in the unemployment line. And so they're going to want to make sure they are making the right decision and you rely on proper decision. So that's what I'm looking for in that section. Okay?
Okay, so Alibaba, is that alibaba.com?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can go to Alibaba. You can go Made in China. I'm trying to think of a couple of the other ones. There's AliExpress, but you won't find quite much information on AliExpress. Alibaba is business to business, B2B, and whatever the other one was that I gave you, is B2C, business to consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if any of you want to order something off Alibaba, even if you're not a business, a lot of the better price off of Alibaba than you get off of whatever the other one is. That's just a little piece of information in case you ever want to do that. Okay, other questions?
I think those were my big ones for this paper. I knew where we had messed up on the sales, but I wasn't sure what or where we could get on the various companies. I think one of the big confusions on the modes of entry part, and that's what I meant, we messed up on the modes of entry, was the rubric just asked for the cons, for the disadvantages. And I thought it was kind of strange, and I guess I should have run that past you, but I'm like, well, if they just want the disadvantages, then... Well,
no, wait a minute. Let me look at that, because that should not be that way. This is in 10.1 or 10.2.
10 dot, let me go back down to it real quick, or back up to it real quick. 10.1, unrealistic modes of entry.
Okay.
It says discuss it and then list the reasons for eliminating it.
Okay. So it's why are they unlikely?
Mm-hmm.
See, and then discuss why you feel each of these would not be a workable or profitable or good business decision. I can understand that being the cons part in here, but it says that are identify and discuss the modes of entry that are likely to be unrealistic or impractical. Again, to me, I think that what you're saying is that it could have been more explicitly stated to do the pros and cons. But please know in business that if somebody asks you about options and unrealistic or impractical, that they're looking for pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to know that you have used good research in the thing.
Right.
And so that's what it's looking for. This was reworded. And you see, you're bringing up another good point, because I'm already complaining about this. This was reworded. The way this used to be is 10.1 said list every mode of entry there is and define it. And then 10.2 said list those that are unrealistic and tell me why. And 3 was list those that are realistic and give me the pros and cons of each. And then 10.4 was make your recommendation. And they tried to eliminate one section so that they could make some, I don't know why. It amazes me why they did that. But I'm sure that what they thought was that they were doing you guys a favor by eliminating one of the sections that you had to write. Well, and then they crammed it all into 3 sections. Well, it didn't decrease what you had to write. It just meant instead of having 4 sections, you had to put it into 3. And instead of each section being worth 3 points, they made each section worth 4 points. This is a dumb management decision. So I understand where you're coming from, and I will point that out. I'll bring that out, that it doesn't say pros and cons. But just know in the business world that that's what they're looking for when they're asking for an evaluation. So I'm in sympathy with you. Other questions? Let me take a look at something here. See, I like your explanation that you just gave me enough to add another half point on there. So I'm going to make each one of those worth 4 points instead of 3.5.
Thanks, Trisha.
Well, you got me a good mood, you know?
Yeah.
That brings me up to 36. I'm not here to penalize you. I'm really not. I'm here to make sure that you learn the things that you're going to need to know in order to go into the international business field. We've had this discussion. I think it's been a good discussion. You've given me your reasoning as to why. I've given you what my expectations are. We are all in agreement, right? I mean, since I'm giving you an extra half point, we should all be in agreement. Okay, that's good. So we're all in. I can't see David, Joshua, Kristen, but I'll assume we're all.
Thanks for the John.
Well, I'm not looking for thanks. I just want to make sure you're all didn't go to sleep on me. Okay. So I will fix that. Any other questions then on the paper? Now make sure that you make the changes in the last paper, okay? In the final paper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any questions on the presentation or on the final paper?
Yeah, on the final paper, I'm looking over the rubric, and I just want to clarify. We're rearranging. It's not like the previous one where we just combined the two. We're actually going in rearranging and in some sections adding additional information. Is that correct?
It should not be correct. The only additional information that you should be asked for is in the last 3 sections, and that's dealing with human resources. And you remember in the last final paper, you had 2 extra sections, or 1 extra section, and that was dealing with your 3 products. But I didn't look at that this close, but what should happen is your final paper should be in exactly the same order as elements A and element B. All you should have to do is to make the changes that's put into the grading comments and put those 2 together in your final paper, add those 3 sections and submit it. Am I incorrect? Did they change the order on this?
Well, I'm looking at the rubric that you emailed out to us.
Uh-huh.
And for example, section 2.1, it says describe and discuss in detail the finished good. And then you say you briefly described them, but here the description should be in much more detail. So I was just taking that to mean that you need more detail than we put in that original paper.
You know,
and if that's incorrect, I'm happy for it.
Well, see, I look up there and see this is being recorded, so now I've got to find a nice, tactful way to
I can pause for a minute if you want.
Would you please, would you mind,
will.
On staffing types, pros and cons of expats, and an org chart, and you'll be fine.
Okay. Awesome.
Anything else now that I'm calmed down?
I was really hating life. I actually took tomorrow off from work so I could just sit down and work on it for the full day. So.
Well, you'll get a lot out of it.
Flowers.
Anything else then on either the presentation or the paper?
Okay. Just quick clarification on the presentation. So, Sorry guys, I know I'm hogging a lot of questions, and feel free to tell me to shut up. But
oh, it's great, Trisha. You're doing awesome.
Okay, so again, just to clarify, I was looking over the rubric for the presentation, and I know when I was doing the bullet points for my slides, I did bullet points for each subsection. We're doing 1 section per slide, correct?
You're doing at least one slide per section.
Right. So we don't have to do a slide for 3.1, 3.2, 3.3 if we can cover all of that in just slide 3.
No, that would be incorrect. You need a slide for 10.1 and a slide for 10.2 and a slide for 10.3. So okay. For each subsection, there needs to be at least 1 slide.
Okay. Thank you. It just, the point thing kind of threw me off on that, but thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
I was thinking I was going to have to go back and redo what I had done there too. I was like, oh, shoot. So.
No, I hope not. Okay. Anything else? Thank you for putting up with my thoughts. And if you run into any questions or any problems, please come visit me in my office. Okay. Let me help you get an A on this last paper. All right.
Thanks, Brother Johns.
All righty. We'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. Trisha, you're so awesome. I am so glad that you caught all those things.
I was looking at the rubrics right before the meeting, and I was literally almost in tears. I was like, I'm going to have to rewrite this entire paper.
I mean, we would have helped you, of course, but yeah.
It's like, okay, cool.
Wow.
I feel a little bit better now. How about you guys?
Yeah. So funny, he like kind of hates this course as much as we do. Or like,
you know, it's interesting because
go ahead.
I hated the thought of international business before I took this class. I put it off to the end for a reason because I didn't want to take it. And then I started learning this stuff, and I actually really enjoy some of this stuff. I freaking hate these projects.
Right. Well, like you said, I felt that way. Like, sorry, I'm sick. Doing like one step and then skipping a step. Like, I feel like it's been kind of jumbled as well. Like hard. Like there's a lot of like trying to connect the dots. When I think, like you said, if they had rearranged it different, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
And actually, yeah, I was that same way. Like, not excited. And then when I first read, it was like on the very first thing he posted, I was like, oh, this actually might be pretty interesting. But I'm with you. These projects are not fun. Group stuff is hard for me. But
I am glad I don't have to do it all myself, though. I appreciate that.
I know. Can you imagine? That would be horrible.
Oh, Trisha, I think you're talking, but your mic's off.
I'm talking and nobody's home. Lights are on, nobody's home. No, I think that if it were an individual project, they wouldn't have us go as much in depth. But it is making us stretch and grow and reach and stuff, so I guess it's good.
Yeah, really to focus on the positive.
Yeah.
Is everyone done with their bulleting for the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I just finished it earlier today, but I don't know where to put it.
In our Google folder, there's a doc called P2 PowerPoint presentation, and you just put it in there where the section is. So like, just find where it goes in the numbers, I guess. So like, I see 2.1 and 2, and then.
So I'm seeing PowerPoint presentation. I'm seeing.
You know what? Let me just send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. I think I'm a little lost.
It's so weird because so whenever you create a doc like within the folder, because you're all like shared in the folder, right? It says like create, like I go to create it and then it's like create and share, and so then it emails you all. So it's so strange that it's never emailed you.
Yeah, I don't. Sorry about that.
No, it's not your fault. Okay, I'm sending it to your BYUI email.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Did I get the email? Just forget to look at it? Like, do I have email to get the link? Or is it supposed to just show up after you send the email?
I have no